Next speaker is Angelina Yang. She's a VP of AI at the Center of Intelligence of Excellence, at Wells Fargo. Angelina leads the data science and engineering teams for conversational and voice AI development at Wells Fargo. Her focus is to research, develop, and deploy machine learning solutions for the next generation of AI assistants across the enterprise. Her teams are committed to the advancement of AI-driven, but not only efficiency and performance, but also ethical principles to put customers first. She drives and fosters innovation and responsible AI research across her organization. And in the past year, she has led more than 10 patent applications in the area of AI transparency, fairness, analysis, and machine learning models. And previously, she was the NLP corporate model risk management team and led the development of model risk governance policy for machine learning. She also went to the Ohio State University. I said that right, didn't I, Angelina? She has a wealth of experience in space and of statistical and machine learning management and consulting, policy research at the Bank of Tokyo, KPMG Advisory, and the UN Department of Economics and Social Affairs. So I'd like to welcome you, Angelina. The floor is yours.
Hi, Jeff. I will share screen now. Give me 1 second.
There you go. Got it.
1 second, let me put on presentation mode. Okay, can you hear me fine, Jeff?
Excellent.
Okay, so sounds good. My name is Angelina. From Wells Fargo. I'm leading the data science team supporting the conversational AI development at the bank. The topic I'm choosing to speak to today is contextual awareness in conversational AI development. Per our media policy, I have to say that the presentation is my personal view. It does not represent any view of my employer. So the agenda today, I will be talking about generally how do we define contextual awareness and showcase some example use cases and how to make a chatbot contextual and maybe some architectural solutions potentially that can be leveraged. And at the end, I would like to touch upon AI ethics and model risk. So to start, a brief history of conversational AI. Personally, I don't recall interacting with a bad chatbot in the past. I probably have abandoned it before I realized how bad it is. So the user here is asking, for instance, can you help me to add a different address? And in the past, the system is probably a rule-based engine, and what's looking for is to find matches against known phrases, such as I want to update my address, I have a new address, I want to change my address, and the system couldn't find any exact matches and is not going to be able to respond appropriately to the user. And over time, machine learning was able to be added into our chatbot system and to add on more flexibilities. So instead of looking for matches, it started looking for similarities. And an intent maybe named change address is added as well. So the bot is able to appropriately respond to the user and say, sure, what's your new address? And here's the 5 levels of conversational AI proposed by Alan Nicole from Rasa. So I think it's well summarized what's the development phase of a chatbot life cycle. The level 1 is a notification assistant. Level 2 is more like an FAQ assistant. Level 3 and level 4 becomes more contextual and personalized. And level 5, I imagine, is something more powerful chatbot in the future that might be more human-like and even more knowledgeable than an average human. A sec. And so where are we now? So most of the people or most of the companies are probably somewhere between level 2 and level 4, where we might have a well-functioning FAQ bot that can answer basic questions, and companies and people are looking for building or achieving this more contextual and personalized assistant to deliver a better user experience to our customers. And the timeline is just a derivative from the last slides, but I've seen personally very a very, very good chatbot that already exists that can carry on very smooth and interactive, good conversation for quite a while. So with the advancement of technology, maybe everything will happen sooner. So how do we define contextual awareness? There are a lot of definitions out there. I would like to think of this from a user experience perspective. So to use a human interaction analogy, I would think if I'm talking with my friends, I would imagine that my friend will be able to at least remember what we just talked about 5 seconds ago, and probably be aware of the surroundings of where we are and maybe the weather. So these are the baseline level of contextual awareness that I'm expecting from my friends. And to add on what Dave just said about short-term memory and long-term memory to be the next level of contextual awareness, I would like to add to another dimension of maybe the complexity, the knowledge that a chatbot can or a human can have. So interacting, for instance, with my doctor, my doctor will be fully aware of my medical history, my health history, and on top of that, my doctor must have a lot of medical knowledge to be able to give me insights of what I need to do to improve my health. So in that sense, eventually this is something that as a user I would expect. Hopefully, chatbot will get there one day to achieve these levels of contextual awareness. So this is just some examples to contrast what is contextual awareness versus commands. So when I interact with my Google Home Assistant, it's really a single turn command, like turn on the light, turn off lights. There's really no interaction. There's not much context there. It's not even a multi-turn conversation. Versus here, maybe the second sentence here, never mind, remove the last 2 items from my cart. So the bot would have to really know what I have in my cart and what are the order of which I put in items into my cart to be able to recognize what are the last 2 items and to remove them. So now if people, assuming that this is what people would like to achieve in the future, and what are the important capabilities that companies want versus where do they think they are. This is a survey done by eMarketer in 2019. The way to read this is the red bar is how much people want this capability versus the black bar to show that where they think they are. So the top of the list item is to understand the value of the customer and their history of transactions, interactions with the company. So that's probably the baseline level of contextual awareness that people are looking for. Some use case examples. This is a use case about contextualization. So the left-hand side is a conversation with the bot without domain knowledge, and the right-hand side is with domain knowledge. So this is a medical use case that the user is asking more information about a medicine, the abbreviated form of a medicine called BUPE. And if the chatbot has the knowledge about the domain, then the conversation will be more natural and we'll be able to connect the dot between abbreviated form and a full form of a medicine and to be able to respond more correctly to the user. Another example about personalization, this is from a user that has asthma. So the user is inquiring about, hey, how's the weather today? And the bot responded with very factual information about the temperature, in terms of degrees, and whether it's sunny and things like that. And the user asks again further, can I play outside? That is asking more personal information. And if the bot has the information regarding the user actually has health conditions such as asthma, and the bot will be able to comment towards that context, such as looks like the pollen level today remains low, so feel free to go outside, enjoy your day. And the last use case is abstraction. So this is something, this is a similar use case as the last one. The user is inquiring about the weather today and specifically asking about how is it impacting my asthma condition? So without abstraction, the bot gives very factual information, and that is probably hard to digest by the user. Versus if the bot actually have the information about the user and his or her conditions, and the bot is able to actually interpret that factual information into something that is very actionable to the user. So how to make a chatbot a more contextual one? There are a lot of information that we can include. The bottom line is essentially to include more data to be integrated to our chatbot, make it more knowledgeable. So things like more situational things regarding where are we located, where is the user located, the user profile, maybe usage pattern, preferences, conversation history, or maybe the user's emotion, things like that. And what are the approaches that can help us to build a chatbot that is more of a contextual one? So one approach I would like to share here today is a domain knowledge base. So that it can be used with linguistic methods or other machine learning statistical modeling techniques together. So the idea is will provide a way to handle more complex, more knowledgeable conversations, rather than just having a baseline intent classification model to classify each utterance one at a time. And the advantage of it is to explicitly to connect the dots, to understand, to resolve your context and understand the name entities that is mentioned in a conversation, and to understand, to have a level of reasoning to understand what are the relationship between what the people are talking about. It also helps to, it is also an opportunity to build something that is probably universally leverageable by other teams at a bank. For instance, to build, entity level embeddings, word embeddings for other type of models across the board for machine learning or NLP type of model, such as recommendation systems or for marketing team, for instance. And it is also, this methodology is also very suitable for financial banking domain, because we're relatively well-structured domain with a very defined set of products and services, and the relationship, what can be done for these entities, services, products are very, very well defined. There's a paper that I listed here in 2018. It's actually a use case leveraging a domain knowledge base for a German bank for building a chatbot system. And lastly, we don't need to start from scratch. FIBO, it's called the Financial Industry Business Ontology, can be used as a baseline to build a knowledge base. So what does a domain knowledge base look like? So a domain knowledge base is essentially a way to represent the data. It serves two functions. One is the storage of data. Second is to help your AI application to navigate through the data to understand different relationships. And it can be constituted by entities, which are nodes in the example graph here, and also has attributes and relationships. So for instance, here the customer as an entity might have attributes like a checking account or credit card account, and they have different transactions that's linked to different merchants and at different dollar amount values. So visually it will be looking like something like this. And conceptually, the architectural framework might look like something like this. So we start with a user message, and you have some type of natural language understanding engine that does the parsing and representation of the user messages to understand what people are talking about, find out the intents, and then you have some actions that might be able to interact with your knowledge base to query your graphs and to understand what are the relationships, what are the products we're talking about, what does the user really want? And then it comes back to interact perhaps with a type of natural language generation engine, and then feedback a bot message to be delivered to our users. Okay, lastly, I would like to touch upon AI ethics and model risk. So this is also something that I brought up earlier about earning trust. There's a really good paper I listed out at the bottom here. It's done by Google researchers in partnership on AI. The title of the work is called Closing the AI Accountability Gap, Defining an End-to-End Framework for Internal Algorithmic Auditing. It's published and presented in the FACT conference, Fairness, Accountability, Transparency and Conference last year. The goal of the work is to address this growing concern about whether, to ensure whether AI development and deployment is beneficial. And whether it's fair and equal to the full scope of users, and whether there are amplification of potential harmful social biases integrated into your AI system. So how do we earn that trust is basically to do something similar, to establish a robust process to do verifications and assess the compliance of your AI system. This is the 5 most commonly identified AI principles that organizations tend to anchor on. So they include privacy, transparency, justice, fairness, non-discrimination, safety, responsibility, and accountability. So to avoid the creation or reinforcement of unfair biases fall into the top first one. That is commonly seen. Okay, lastly, I would like to speak a little bit more of this framework. It's called SMACTR. It is done by Google. At Wells Fargo, we follow something quite similar to this. So I would like to, and this paper is really well written. So I would like to share about a little bit more about this. So the framework encompasses like 5 distinct stages. One is scoping, and then mapping, artifact collection, testing, and reflection. So in the scoping phase, you might want to define the scope of understanding the AI applications. Some prerequisite can be the PRD or the whatever the AI principles your organizations declare to anchor on, and some outcomes can be, one can be the use case ethics review that is really asking a question of who is likely to be impacted by your AI application and how. It can be done by ethics review board. Another artifact that can occur at this stage is potentially social impact assessment. That is used to inform the use case ethics review, and the content, the questions asked there is really how the use of the AI system might change people's ways of life, their culture, their community, their maybe political system, their environment, health being, stuff like that. At the mapping page, sorry, need to drink of water. At the mapping stage, it's really just to get a stakeholder buy-in and to find out the list of collaborators that we can work with to carry out this exercise. And you can potentially start the failure mode and analysis to understand the impact of the AI system. Artifact collection phase. So that's a compilation of checklists of understanding what are the materials that we need to perform such a exercise. It can include a data sheet that covers the robust, the data collection process, and whether the data you collect for model development is robust. And the model cards is something that describes in detail the model development process and also the assumptions that you made while doing the development phase. And also what is the intended purpose of the model development. The testing phase is where we conduct some qualitative testing or quantitative testing for the robustness of the system. It can include some type of adversarial testing to challenge to stress the input of the model development. And you might have an ethical risk analysis to understand, to identify some of the risks and assess the severity of the risk levels. And at the reflection phase, we're compiling some type of remediation plan, risk mitigation process together with our stakeholders. And
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. We've got just another couple of minutes left before we got to move to the next one.
Yeah, I'm done.
But I do want to get a question in,
sure.
from the attendees. Michael McTeer says, "Great talk," and he says, "Do you use rule-based methods for the chatbot, or train using machine learning or end-to-end learning?"
That's a very good question. We have both. We have rule-based engine, and we're targeting to use end-to-end data, whole conversation-driven development for building a chatbot.
Right. And how did you? It may seem like a silly question, but what was the? Why did you decide to go in that direction?
In terms of using more data?
Using the end-to-end learning.
So our experience is to make the chatbot more more contextual and being able to handle more complex conversation. In intent, a lot of the chatbot development started with intent classification and trying to build the models from a classified model, and then the next step is to improve the performance of the chatbot, is to actually have the in some way to do away with the intent classification, do away with intents, and being able to create these kind of user stories based on a whole conversation. So that's the driver of development towards that end. And our team, we do think that is the future development trend for chatbot development.
Right. Very nice. Thank you so much, Angelina. That was terrific. I appreciate it.